Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Before we get started with the show, this is the Trigger Warning. It's a horror podcast. We talk about horror things. It's more of a psychology thing, and we talk about interesting stuff for the most part, but we do talk about horror content, so we do have to have the disclaimer, if you will, of there could be such sensitive subjects such as child abuse, violence, R-word, S-word, and curse words. And those things may happen, but it's not the whole point of the show. But we do have to say that. And with that out of the way, what is the rest of the point of the show, Stephen?
Well, we will be talking to today's guest, which is Ms. L. Marie Wood, author of the Realm Trilogy, Crescendo, and The Promise Keeper. By the way, welcome.
Yes, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Our pleasure. So the general gist of the what we do here, we will talk less about your body of work and more about your love of the genre as a fan from childhood through adulthood. And then towards the end, we'll talk about any common themes that keep cropping up earlier in the call and talk about how those themes maybe intersect with the genre. Before we get into that, do you want to let us know what you're currently working on?
Oh, sure. I just recently had a release called The Horror Aesthetic, which talks about, it's nonfiction, and it talks about similar ideas. You know, what is horror? Why do we like to be frightened? You know, how does horror actually intersect with us on cultural levels? Women writing horror, you know, how is that any different from men writing horror? Just things like that. So it's sort of a deep dive that I've been working on, not actively working on for so many years, but I think I'd say 10, 15 years. And basically, because of the nature of the work that I've moved into, I used to be a project manager, and now in my other life, right, I used to be a project manager, and now I'm a English professor, creative writing professor. And over the time, you know, the whole time I was writing my own stuff, so I have had a chance to observe and talk about and teach and lecture on these subjects. And this book is sort of the collection of those, thought processes and discussions.
So you may be even more suited for our conversation than I knew.
Right? I was just thinking, it's too bad we didn't interview you earlier before you
published the book.
Posted the book? There's still time to add stuff about us, isn't it?
Hey, listen, there's always other versions that we can put out, you know.
This is true.
Different editions.
What we're going to be talking about will, of course, be more geared towards your own personal take on things. But, you know, it's not meant to be a therapy session. So if there are any questions that we ask that you don't want to answer, you can just say pass and we'll move on. But for you personally, starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
I don't know. That's a really hard question. I was thinking about that a second ago because I've been writing since I was 5. And as strange as that sounds, it's true. And it's always been psychological horror, which is also a little, as I've grown older, I'm just so thankful that my family was able to deal with that because that's a little scary from a 5-year-old, you know.
Right.
But yeah, a little bit. But it's always been that. I've always liked to think about the world differently and just sort of tilt your head. That's the way I think about it. Look at your space in front of you and then turn your head to the side and how do you see it now? And that's sort of the basis of how I've always written. So I think that I've always done that. And so everything can be frightening. If you just look at your street right now out of the window and then turn your head to the side and imagine what it could be if you didn't have the perspective that you're looking at this moment, this regular daily thing that you see. What lies underneath? What's happening inside everyone's house? What's happening inside every car that passes by? So I think that because my mind has always gone there, I've always had this mindset. There's no way to put a finger on what, like early memories of something scary. I think there's always been ideas of scary possibilities. That's like a non-answer, I realize, but it's the best answer I can give you. I mean, I can talk about early movies that frightened me, sure. Or, you know, as I've been a novelist forever, I've also, my first degree is in film production, so I've always loved horror movies. So I can talk about one of those, but my own, like just alone, not watching anything, not stimulated by anything. What is frightening, you know, early on? Like everything, I think.
Not an uncommon answer. The first question is really more like what kind of things inspired
books,
you
movies.
As far as like anything, books, movies, experiences, just any.
Okay, Okay, well, yeah, no, that's easier to answer than what in life, but definitely. I mean,
we're not getting that deep yet.
Well, yeah, but
Give us a minute.
tend to go there right away. But I'll hold off. No, I think that early on, Ira Levin and Rosemary's Baby, that kind of thing. There was a TV show back in the day called "Don't Be Afraid of the Dark," and it came on strangely on Thanksgiving, right? So when the family all the adults were watching the football game, the kids were in the back, and we're watching this movie, and it's terrifying all of us, and no one knows we're watching it. But this woman, she's pregnant, they live in a house, and she's alone most of the time, and she hears this weird noise and these little things coming in, and in the end they carry her off, So she really did need to be afraid of the dark. And I remember thinking, are there little things that can carry you off in the night? Like, is that real? I mean, is there something that could happen? And that gave me a lot of sleepless nights, but also gave me a lot of ideas, So yeah, there's a lot of, and Rosemary's Baby is absolutely terrifying. And so I really think that a lot of Ira Levin's work early on for me was stimulating mentally, but frightening what if they have the ticket to what's right and all this other stuff that we think is right isn't? And if that's true, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. I'm laughing to myself that you mentioned Rosemary's Baby before you mentioned Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
Being a child of the 70s, I think that people just didn't realize that we shouldn't watch so much stuff like early, and I don't want to say that we were being babysat by television. I think a lot of people say that, and that could be true, but that gives you the wrong impression of what parenthood was like. And I don't want to take away from the things that our parents did for us and did with us. But I think that there was this notion of it's on television, it's not going to be that bad if it made it through whatever sanctioning bodies that stopped, So if we're on it, if you can look at it, it can't be what Rosemary's Baby is. And The Exorcist was on television, and I saw that. And most of us saw that, so I think that, I was exposed to a lot of things that perhaps we would wait for now, but so were all of us. I'm sure that you've heard that answer before from other people, other creatives who have done this, that we just watch stuff we shouldn't have seen and it burned itself into our minds. And that's a little terrifying, but it's the truth.
No, it's not. It's a rather common answer for people. Like, if you're about 40 years or older, growing up, you're right. It was a common thing for things like The Exorcist or Rosemary's Baby to just be on television.
Well, in an edited form. But
in edited form, yeah. All the graphic violence is there, but the curse words were changed out for stupid words.
Right. Oh, yeah. They didn't worry about the stuff that the whole devil, or demonic possession part didn't care about that. No, don't do that. Just don't say.
But don't you dare say shit.
Oh, don't you dare.
Right.
Absolutely not.
You said something that made me think about, today's kids just have open access to the internet. And I mean, a lot of people who maybe are younger don't understand that, like what you were saying about if it's on TV, it must be okay. Well, but that was because the FCC had certain guidelines that if it was going to be on broadcast TV, you could do X, Y, and Z. And so there was some trust of, at least, during the day until 9 p.m., your kids were safe to watch, whatever was on TV to an extent. Right. Like you say, there are certain things that are a little more scary, but like kids today, they like, who even watches TV anymore? I don't.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I watch people just stare at their phones. And if I mention something that might've been on a television show, they don't know what I'm talking about.
What?
Right. Like, what's a television? And it confuses and surprises me all the time, but it's just the passage of the change in time, I guess. I don't stare at my phone for, entertainment, and because of that, people look at me in the same way. So it is what it is.
You make like just phone calls and stuff,
right? Where you actually use it for like a calendar? No, no.
Well, a lot, but that's also because we, having grown up on actual PCs, often have PCs, and a lot of younger people don't bother getting a laptop because the phone can do everything that they want it to. So
yeah, it's a good point.
That is true. I remember asking someone to print something out, and the look on their faces when they said, "We don't have a printer," and I was like, "What do you mean you don't have a printer?" It was the strangest moment for me. But again, I don't know that my response was correct. I mean, I think that of course I have a printer, but I can't. it's not as easy to buy ink as it used to be, and that should be the indicator to me that maybe things have shifted.
Well, that's a whole other conversation. I mean,
Yep.
for a while I had an eBay business, so I have a laser printer with like actual toner, and I don't go even the whole ink cartridge bullshit. Let's not even go there.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
So how old were you when you saw Rosemary's Baby?
Oh my God. I might have been 8 or 9.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't like 6, but I don't know. I think Don't Be Afraid of the Dark might have been like 6 or 7 because it came on.
So it wasn't Rosemary Baby first.
No, but that's, I think, the one that sticks out when I think about impact. Like maybe Don't Be Afraid of the Dark has a bigger impact than what I'm willing to unpack. I don't even know. But I think that Rosemary's Baby was just, I was so shy. And I'm from New York originally. So all of the imagery, I could find that building. I mean, some of those shots are real. You know, some of those,
yes.
some of those buildings are, you know, apartment buildings are real, and I know where they are, and I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. So I think that it sticks out because I can find those locations. Much like The Exorcist. Once you find The Exorcist stairs, then you're terrified for real. Because you know where they are now. You know what I mean? And you can see the layout, and you understand where the house is.
Let's see. Any other media jump out to you from your childhood?
Oh, sure. I mean, as we think about it, you know, of course, back in the day, I mean, it was Star Wars. My childhood is the 70s, so Star Wars is a big deal. And that gave me the whole, I didn't know what a space opera was. I didn't understand that terminology in any way at that time. And I'm watching these battles happening and these, you know, the battle between good and evil, the family bond, you know, learning, like trying really hard to be a Jedi and, you know, figuring out, failing and doing all of the stuff that we saw there. Then we see the Indiana Jones stuff coming up, and all of that combined with these horror movies that frightened us, because there's always something to be afraid of or running from, fleeing from in even the action movies. I mean, Indiana Jones is not a horror movie, but there's terrifying elements within all of the films. Yeah. So Darth Vader is what used to frighten me and used to be in my dreams. And that's, you know, amazing. So all of these elements combined with my, I don't know, predilection to psychological horror combined to make this sort of ball of influence, if that makes any sense. So when the 80s came and I was older and I got the chance to watch, you know, some of, you know, A Vampire in Brooklyn or things like that, you know, even though there was a comedy element, there was still this undercurrent of these things are to be frightened of, you know, and if you sit and think about them, they can really permeate your thoughts and make you wonder about, you know, society and how it is now and if things really exist in walking daily life. And I think there's like a whole genre of that. I mean, urban fantasy does a lot of horror antagonists, like living and walking and interacting with humans just day to day. Right. So, but I didn't even know that there was something like that could exist. But the fear of it possibly existing based upon the movies that I had seen, like, I mean, if you've seen Blackula at all, the story is fantastic. Not the name notwithstanding, I don't love the title. However, the story is fantastic. And could it have happened? Hey, what if it did? You know, and this would be what the outcome is. And he was walking around in present day, you know, after he'd been awakened, he was walking around present day. So I think that because I was early on with this sort of, you know, interest in creativity in that way, all of these movies and films and you know, just memories balled themselves together to create this, I don't know, I don't want to call it a cloud because that almost sounds negative, but something that overhangs and gave me this, you know, this history of terror, if you will.
Nebula.
Not walking around. Nebula. Why not? I'm not walking around frightened, and that might say something about me, who wasn't walking around frightened with this ball of stuff above my head. Someone else might have been, and they might have then been a different kind of creator.
Did you have any reoccurring dreams when you were a kid?
No, interestingly enough, I don't think that I did. Not if I did, I don't remember them. I'll go with that. I'm happily open to say that if I had it and it's gone, let it be gone. But I don't remember anything like that. No.
Okay. Was there ever a time in your childhood when you were terrified of something in real life?
Not anything that was real. But I think that the fear of the what if became real for me once in the cemetery.
Okay.
So we had a lot of deaths in my life. And my grandmother was an older sibling, the oldest sibling of 10. And so all of my great aunts and uncles were older, just everyone, and there were just a lot of them. And so for a period, we had a death every year, at least one death every year. Sometimes we had more. So we spent a lot of time in cemeteries, and my grandmother would go to visit the cemetery, long after services and put flowers. And, some generations definitely pay more attention to cemetery visitation. And so she did that. And so I would go with her. And it was just an overcast day. I mean, a perfect example of the beginning of Night of the Living Dead, it was just out there and there's nobody really there. And then all of a sudden you see somebody staggering in the distance. And it was at the far end of the cemetery, which would be the older section, of course, where the graves aren't, they're not level and they're just, some of them are overgrown and all of that. And I'm just waiting for her to finish, because they're having full on conversations with the dead. And I was just waiting, I'm just kind of standing there. So right. I look around and I notice that there's just a few of us left, but that wasn't uncommon either. But I look and there's somebody that was grieving, clearly. I mean, as an adult, I can tell they were grieving. But as a child, they were staggering and leaning over the stone, and it looked like they might have been getting out. They were sitting on the ground, and they were trying to get up. And I'm like, oh, my God, what's that? I was like, oh. And I remember saying to my grandma, we have to get out of here. We have to get out of here. And she was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, oh, you don't see it?
Right? Like, do you not see the zombie? Right? Are we using the zombie word in this one?
I don't even think I didn't have the word for zombie. I just was like, this person's dead and they're getting out of the ground. Do you not see that? And I remember it clearly. And I can, as an adult, I know that's not what happened. And that person didn't come towards us. It's not like they did anything, It was just that visual. And I remember just staring, like if I keep my eyes on them,
right? It's like the angels from Doctor Who. Just never look away.
Don't look away. And I'm just like, I just couldn't, and so and it stuck with me because of, like, now I think it's the most interesting perspective, because how did I get there at such a young age? I feel like,
I was just wondering, like, if you didn't know the phrase zombie, like, had you gleaned, like, maybe a scene from Night of the Living Dead or something, or heard about zombies?
I must have, and just didn't retain the word zombie, I guess. I don't even know, but I must have, because why would I? But again, though, at the same time, I think that we are afraid of some stuff. Some kids walk into things and they are unafraid of most things, but then they're afraid of like a paper bag or something. Not to be, I've seen that happen. I don't know that anyone in that scenario, because we were not in the supermarket and someone was wobbling like that. We were in the cemetery. And I already knew we were there to see. I wasn't 4. I was old enough to know we were there to visit someone who had passed away, and they were in this ground. Their body, at least, was in the ground. So there was the connection of anybody coming up off the ground, could have come out the ground, and I should be afraid of that. You know what I mean?
I'm more amused just thinking what that person must have thought. Like, if they had come closer to you and you're just like freaking out more and more and more and more, they're like, what the hell's wrong with this girl?
Why is she screaming? What is going on? Why are they running? That would have been
Well, I mean, silver lining, if they were depressed or, grief-stricken over their lost loved one to the point of staggering, maybe the interruption of your shocked look kind of snapped them out of that,
or more likely than it turns into the comedy thing of, what are they running from? Maybe I should run.
Right, so I'm
running after you and you're screaming running for me.
What the hell's wrong with this kid?
Oh, that's awesome. That would have been awesome. Okay, like literally somebody needs to write that. If they listen to this, they should write that, because that is funny.
Yes, that is a comedic scene right there.
Yes.
What a scene.
So flipping that last question around to the opposite, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or at bliss?
Yeah.
I think I always did.
Okay.
I think that being with my mother and my grandmother made me feel at peace. I never worried even about the things that maybe I should have worried about. I mean, I didn't think about my mother ever having a traffic accident. I just, it was never anything I thought about. Like she, as far as I was concerned, would never, ever, ever, ever have any problems. I was one of those people. And if I was, if I'm ever, as an adult, if I need something and I really need to be calm, I will call my mother. My grandmother, unfortunately, has passed away, but I will call my mother and be calm. So I think that that has always been there, which probably made it so that any of these things that I might have, written, thought about, watched, whatever, didn't affect me to my soul, because I already knew that, okay, if we're in this zombie apocalypse or if we're in something, my mom and my grandma and me, we're getting out of this, or we're going to fight. We're going to do something. We're not going to just stand here. So I guess that the peace in that has always been there for me.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe there may have been some time in your earlier childhood when you were scared of something and, went running to mom and, she took care of you, and that helped out.
Probably. And the good thing is I don't have a memory of it. You know what I mean? I think that's a good thing. If I was terrified to the degree I woke up out of my bed and ran to my mother, if it has graciously left my memory, then so be it. Go on. That's fine.
That may be the answer to the next question I was going to ask, but I'll ask anyway, just because you never know what might pop up. Many of our guests have reported that there was a dividing line before which they were genuinely afraid of the horror media that they were consuming. And then after a certain line, then they were like, okay, now I see it being enjoyable or fun or exciting or whatever. And so I was going to ask you, was there a dividing line like that for you, or was it always excitement or joy?
I think I like to be frightened by some stuff. So that's the excitement and joy for me. It doesn't always happen. Pardon me. It doesn't always happen where I can be frightened by some things. I think once you write it, if I'm creating it too, it's kind of difficult to get me. But there is a movie that I saw in the early 2000s. It's called Ju-On. It's actually Ju-On 2 is the one that frightened me most. And I had been watching right? Exactly. I've been watching horror movies for years. I mean, decades, obviously, before I saw that. And I saw that movie and I was like literally terrified. I still don't watch that movie at night. You might not get me to watch that movie. I have to be in the right mindset to watch it. And if I happen upon a room and it's going on, I might leave the house. There are sounds from that movie that frighten me. There are scenes, visuals, and it terrifies me. But I've seen other movies that are similar. There's only one other one that really has a scene that, it's very close. But there's never been a season where everything suddenly stopped being frightening. And I think that's great. That says a lot to me in that breaking through I don't want to call it a veil, or I don't know, just breaking through my maturity. At some point to realize that some stuff isn't real, and some of this stuff shouldn't be. It's just television. It's just a joke. It's just entertainment, if you will. To break through that and still get me sometimes, I'm excited about the idea that can still happen. So yes and no. I think for a long time, early on, I watched a horror movie and it didn't make a lot of sense, so I wasn't scared of it. Then it made some sense and it was like, ooh, that's creepy. I'm scared of that, but let's watch another one, right? And then, I'm not scared again. Like the first Nightmare on Elm Street is terrifying. Everything after is not, to me. Right. Okay. So same guy, it's still Freddy Krueger.
Right.
So I think that for Ju-On 2 to get me and years later is exciting and refreshing. And as a creative, I am pumped because I'm actually doing this and somebody actually rocked me, like really rocked me.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more when we get to the adult section. Coming back to the childhood section, was anybody else in your family a fan of horror when you were growing up?
Yeah, my mom likes to watch it, but it scares her, but not to the point of not being able to sleep. But she likes to watch it. She's one of the ones who likes to watch through her fingers. She's covering her eyes and she's still looking at it. She likes to do that. My dad. Well, I think we all watched it. We all watched it. Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if that's maybe start of that, where you were watching it with mom and felt that you were safe because you were with mom.
Probably. I mean, if we're all shrieking and like, ooh, getting the willies off something, and then we all go to bed. Yeah, nobody else is worried about it. Why would I be? So yeah, I think that maybe because the people in my house didn't make it taboo or overly realistic. They didn't take it that way, so I didn't.
Right. Okay. So the next two questions are also going to be a pair. I'm going to ask the negative one first so we can end on the positive. Do you remember the first person you hurt?
The first person I hurt?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's probably my mother.
Yeah.
If you think about
Not
it,
uncommon.
we don't live up to the expectations that our parents have.
Right.
All the time, at least. And I'm certain that some of that hurt her. I know of some that she might have told me hurt her, but I'm certain I heard her long before she said anything to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first person you helped?
Oh.
It's good questions, right?
All of these are great. I would probably say, that's a weird answer, but I'll say my grandmother.
Okay.
Because she had a friend that was declining,
Okay.
And so her name was Miss Buffalo. And she was, by the time I can remember her, like my grandmother was not a young grandmother. I think she was 64 when I was born. So any of her friends we're talking about, by the time I can remember them, we're all talking to people in their 70s. And she was declining and had become just, I don't know, difficult to talk with and had no use for children. But at the same time, what I would do is my grandmother would make her lunch, and they lived on the same floor. She would make her lunch and, bring some to her and take the plates and clean up. And someone else would come in and clean the house, but she would go in and help, move things before that happened, all that kind of stuff. She was really very helpful. But I would get out of school and I would go pick up the plates and I would sit with Miss Buffalo and I would play a hand of, a card game named Tonk with her when she could play. And then we would play Pekino, not Pekino. What's the name of that game? No, it's Pekino.
Pitching?
Pekino, I think.
No,
not Plinko. No, it's a game with a whole bunch of cards. What is
Pinochle.
No.
Pinochle. There it is.
Pinochle. That's it. Pinochle. And play that. There we go. And, just do that with her for a little while and give my grandmother time to not be running an errand for someone else for just a few minutes. You know what I mean? And I did that every day, because I would go to my grandmother's house after school because her house was closer to, my mother was a principal in a high school. So I was out before her. And I would just go home to my grandmother's after school. And I would go to Miss Buffalo and sit with her. And like I said, Miss Buffalo didn't have a lot of use for children. So it was difficult because could be cruel sometimes. But she still wanted the attention and the help, not the attention, but the company, if you would. And I sat with her. And I took it when she wasn't happy and I dealt with it. So in helping Miss Buffalo, I helped my grandmother. Miss Buffalo and my grandmother had been really good friends. And my grandmother was very sad to see what was happening to her friend. And so I helped because I thought, gee, I want someone to help my grandmother if something like that ever happened to her.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a really long time ago.
Good memories, though.
Yeah.
My father also played Tonk that he picked up in the Navy, but he taught me that decades ago, and I have never played it since. So I have long forgotten the rules.
Did you ever play 500?
Well, I thought 500 was like sort of like gin rummy, but the first people to get to a certain point level is, that's how you win, is adding up the points.
Yeah, it is. But Tonk is similar in that way. You just there's some less cards in your hand and less rules about how you spread, if I remember properly. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's been a while for both of us.
Yeah, I first learned how to play gin rummy with my grandmother when she used to go visit her sister and her husband. I grew up in Chicago, and she had a fairly, I don't want to say a large family, but I mean larger than today. She was one of 5, and they all lived in the same geographic area. So every Sunday we would rotate and visit a different family member.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
So teenagers, you mentioned A Vampire in Brooklyn. That you liked that because it was, thinking about there being, actual horrors interacting with real life.
Right.
Blackula basically was kind of the same thing, except it was maybe adding in revenge. Anything else jump out to you from your teenage years?
Oh, so Death by Temptation. Oh boy. And Do the Right Thing. Now, funny, I mentioned that and we're talking about horror, but some of it, and Jungle Fever as well, I'd probably stick in the same boat because those became real. That's realistic horror to some degree.
Yes.
And I had not interacted with that, and no one called it that.
Right.
I think it's only, recently that we're starting to realize that some of these things, because
It all depends on the lens from which you look at.
100%. Black horror was still like we just mentioned, Vampire in Brooklyn, Death by Temptation. If you Ganja and Hess, but that's the 70s. I didn't see it till the 80s, so for me, it's an 80s movie. Some of the blaxploitation horror movies that existed, I didn't see till the 80s. So for me, the timeline merges a bit. Mm-hmm. So all of that stuff was quote unquote black horror, but this realistic horror that is just a regular, commercial movie wasn't termed, like Get Out could easily have been made in that same time period and we would have understood.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, and no one was calling it that. And I'm not going to say that I had the forethought to see it then either, but I did see those movies and understand that the reality that's laying as an undercurrent in here is terrifying. And to me, and anyone who sees this and doesn't see that needs to watch again. I remember thinking that. But at the same time, because I like supernatural horrors, like The Exorcist, The Omen, especially movie number 1. These movies, and all this is mid to late 70s, but again, I'm not getting the chance to see this stuff until the 80s when I'm a teen or close to being a teen. These movies are supernatural and therefore removed enough that I don't see the reality in it.
Okay.
So I wasn't touched by the realistic or the realism of it until much, much later. So my teenage years are filled with me actually getting to watch the Omen and not having to sneak that one, because my mom, for whatever reason, realized that religious horror was clearly taboo, right? So I couldn't see that.
There's a line we do not cross.
Exactly. The Amityville Horror, that house was maybe 2.5 hours away from where we were. So we, me and some friends took a trip driving out there. We were teens now, we can drive ourselves, and we went and we were so frightened. We were like, it's really right there. Don't go any closer, you fool. What are you doing? Get back in the car. Yeah. But, we definitely had those moments to freak ourselves out. And so I think that my teenage years were full of this, I can watch it and nobody's saying anything. And now I can actually go find the spaces. How cool is that? Right. It was incredibly cool. I can't deny. Incredibly cool.
So I did see Do the Right Thing, but I didn't see Jungle Fever or Death by Temptation. Tell me about those.
Well, Jungle Fever is an interracial relationship on display.
Right, I know about that.
The reactions, and it's scary when you think about. I just love is love, and I think people should be able to love who they want to love. And so watching that bothered me. Death by Temptation was a kind of religious. The guy was a son of a preacher, and it's he wants to be in a relationship, and then he meets the devil, if you will, basically, in female form, and it's he's trying not to be possessed, and all of these. His friends are like, don't do this. And he's not listening because she's just that, to put in the terminology of the day, she was that fly. Yeah.
But, I can see some, I don't even know what to call it.
And Kadeem, Samuel Jackson's in this movie, but Kadeem Hardison, who was in the spinoff of a Different World. He was in A Different World.
Yep.
Okay.
TV show. He's in that movie, and he's like, it's a good old fashioned vampire movie, except it starts off with this possession, and they mix. I love it. They mix baddies like this. Are we having like demon possession? Or are we vampires? What are we actually doing? It doesn't matter. Put the scary stuff on the screen. Go for it.
Yes.
And it was fun. It was a lot of fun to watch that because back in the day. Black horror, and not that I was looking for quote unquote black horror, but it was nice to see black people doing the same kind of movies. You know what I mean? And you didn't distinguish, at least I didn't distinguish between the two different types of movies, but it was excellent to see it happening and see it all unfold, in front of me and have black characters that I was already aware of. Like Samuel Jackson, for whatever reason, I kind of knew who he was. I can't remember why I knew that then, but I did. I'd have to think back to what he might have already been in to figure that out.
Okay. Let's see. So any reoccurring dreams in your teens?
No, I don't think I've had any reoccurring dreams in a general sense. But I will mention another movie that is Really good and did frighten me. The Serpent and the Rainbow. And that's from the 80s as well.
Bill Pullman. Really
and that movie is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. Because it's
what
like...
scared you? Sorry.
Imagine.
Buried alive.
Right. Imagine. And the fact is, so where I'm from in New York, there are, at least at the time, I can't say for now, but we had a lot of Haitian families. A lot. I mean, a lot of Haitian families. This movie is about, it's shot in Haiti. It's about voodoo. It's about something I don't know. No one's talking about it. No one's talking about voodoo in New York, just around the table. It's not being discussed. But I knew people who were from the area, and it seemed so authentic. I was like, wait a minute. Is that real? Again, I think my whole thing has always been, could that be real? And so it frightened me. He was out there. He got, some dust blown in his face, and all of a sudden he is buried alive. No. Mm-hmm. Terrifying. That's one of the worst. No, absolutely not.
Was that ever proven to be a real thing? The like blackout dust or hallucinogenic dust you can blow in someone's face? I want to say I did some research on this for some writing, and it's like it is real, but it's not as instantly effective, I think.
Well,
I don't know.
So the problem is that there are maybe two different kinds, and one is apparently immediately effective, and the other one maybe is not. So, but the one that you're referring to, which comes from the Caribbean, that one is not immediately effective. But the other one, which I think comes from South America, is. But I don't think that one was known at the time. That didn't come to be a thing until maybe 90s, 2000s, maybe 2010s.
Maybe.
Well, all I know is I never wanted to find out, still don't want to know, and I removed myself from that piece of it. But, I mean, there's stories of people who have come back from their grave. Clarence Narcisse. I remember that story. And, they find him walking in his village, and it's clearly him. And, he's got people who can identify that is clearly him, and they buried him. No. I'm sorry. That was the most terrifying thing. And I think the thought is it lingers because, again, what if?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like you were talking about, looking down your block earlier. Like, what if?
Yeah.
Moving into adult years then. Ju-on, you mentioned. Was there anything else in your adult years that really stood out to you?
Ju-on is the most terrifying movie I've ever seen. I have got to be clear. And I think the introduction to that ghost, this mother who, or woman, it doesn't have to be a mother all the time, but a woman, because there's a movie called Shudder, Shutter. Mm-hmm. It's around it's early 2000s as well, I want to say.
Yeah, it's one about like a haunted camera or something, I think. I've not seen it, but it's on my list.
Yes, and it's 2008. And it is also terrifying, but it's a woman, so I'm changing it from a mother to a woman. Once I was introduced to this horror antagonist, I'll say, and I want to call it the Unroyo. I think I'm saying it right. I'm trying to at least.
Are you talking about Ju-on or the Shudder?
The entity in general, because both of them are sort of being embodied in that way in those two movies, and there are many movies that speak about this Japanese ghost.
Okay.
Who does these things. This ghost is motivated by, retribution. I mean, it's a woman who has been murdered because of their sense of worth. And in Ju-on, the woman had been having an affair, and the husband finds out, kills her child, kills their animal, their cat. And this woman, is why the reason she continues to come back in the way she does is because she's, sort of, well, oh my God, angry, put plainly. And in Shudder, it's a woman who was wronged by this guy who was just kind of, stringing her on. And there had been some sort of an abuse to her earlier that he was aware of, and he didn't do anything about or do anything to the people who did it. And then she dies. So she comes back angry. Mm-hmm. Once I was introduced to that being, the Onryu, that shows itself in a lot of different, forms, I've been terrified of it and I think the reason is because I get it. I get why they're so angry. I get why there's nothing you can do to kill it. I get why she's always going to win, and she does not need the cover of night to come for you. I get it. I get it. And so I think that, so those two movies for sure, but Ju-on more so than anything ever. I've never seen anything else that has frightened me to that degree. But yeah, so I think it's because as a woman, now I'm a grown woman and I recognize that we're not treated fairly or humanely in the world everywhere. And that was something I was unaware of as a younger person. And maybe that's the sheltering that my family did provide for me. I didn't ever think there was anything that I could walk into that would be damaging to me as a woman. Sure, you don't walk. Of course, we all know about, ways we have to protect ourselves as women, just in terms of the clothing and where we are and awareness of our surroundings. That's not what I mean. I mean, in a general sense, I didn't think the fact that I was a woman could get me killed or get me harmed or get me, And this just because these women did things that they chose to do, they were killed for it. I understand. So that's why this Unryu has become so frightening to me.
Okay. It's more identifiable. And yeah, of course they come back with revenge after a situation like that.
It makes 100% sense. Unlike a slasher movie with this random killing, utterly random. We have no idea why most of these slashers are out here just cutting people up. But in this one, I can empathize 100%.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like recently I did the 31 Days of Halloween thing, and one of the categories was revenge. And there's a lot of rape revenge movies out there and SA revenge movies. And the only silver lining there is if you make it through the disgusting scenes, you're all on board for all the killing and torture later, because it's like, yes, do it. Fuck him up.
It's true. I Spit on Your Grave, and I swore I'd never watched it. I almost couldn't get through it. And maybe it's because I'm a woman. It was so hard to watch.
Yeah, imagine. It's hard for me to watch as a man, but yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I'm like, it shouldn't be easy for anyone to watch when you think about that, because it's like, this is depravity. This is not just, normal activity people do in the street. No, this is disgusting and horrible. And the 78 movie, I didn't even attempt to watch until I was grown. I'm beyond college.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, but then I couldn't get through it. It took me forever. I finally
got long. I like some movies where they do it, just they imply it, where it's maybe 30 seconds at most. I Spit on Your Grave was like, God, minutes. Grueling, excruciating minutes. Yeah, and I watched it as an adult. I think I fast forwarded through it.
Oh, see? And I get why, but it's almost like I don't know if you saw the Passion of the Christ.
I've not seen that. It's Jim Caviezel, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, it just, and it depends. It doesn't even matter. It almost doesn't matter what religion you practice or practice nothing. It almost doesn't matter, because just watching a human go through what that 2-hour movie puts you through. Doesn't matter what your religious affiliation is. You know what I mean? It's just the abuse of a person. And I've never been in a theater that was dead silent when the movie was over.
Bet.
Dead silent, because you'd been crying for 2 hours. People were weeping. And then we were just stunned. It was almost like it's over. We made it. So I felt the same way about I Spit on Your Grave. When I finally got through it, I was like, God, I can't believe I've got through this thing. I've got through it. So yeah, I absolutely think that Ju-on was my first introduction to this Japanese Onryo. But I get it. So yeah, I can definitely say that's a lingering thing. If there's a question about anything that lingers since, it's because I understand her. So yeah.
So understanding the importance of the topic at hand, is there something about Ju-on other than the fact that it was just the first one like that you had seen? Was there something about Ju-on that made it stand out to you in terms of it being, scarier than anything else that you'd seen? Or is it just because that was the first one?
No. Whew, the imagery. Mm-hmm. There's something to be said about this hair and the face thing. And you see it in The Ring, and it's interesting, right? Yeah. That's probably the first time most people actually, and at least in the US, notice this hair in the face wearing a long sort of frock, if you will, just formless frock. And you know, there's something underneath it, but you can't see it. And that's actually the fear of it, by the way. You can't actually see it. You don't see it until she wants you to. You can't see her face at all until she wants you to. And that's, you know, we can be philosophical about that and dive into why you can't see her face and the shaming that can occur that when certain women's behavior isn't acceptable into someone's eyes. There's a shaming that can occur, and so you
have metaphors there. That's for sure.
All sorts of, but it's if you with Juwan, you don't see her face, but sometimes you hear her. You don't always see her entire face, but sometimes you can see one eye, this one accusatory eye. The sound that she's making, there's like a gargling that we all used to do as children. And that's what bugged me, because I've done that so many times, and I've heard little kids do that like near me. And now that I know what it sounds like in this context, I can barely stay still when a kid's playing like that, because I'm always like, stop it. But we've all done it. But it's a gargling of her throat because it's like a death rattle, a continuous death rattle, and you understand that this is the only sound she can make now. So when you see this movie, and then also I'll tell you, the first thing that got me is that she killed someone in broad daylight around other people. That breaks all the horror rules. Usually people never see the supernatural thing that's coming to you. They never know you're dealing with something supernatural right in front of them. They hear about it the next day. They never are in the bathroom stall and someone kills you in there and they didn't know that you were dying in there. And that's not what happens. It's not 2:00 in the mall. But this movie absolutely does that. This movie takes away places that are safe spaces. Like, who doesn't like to jump into their bed on a chilly evening and curl up in the covers and read a book or whatever? Yeah, after watching that movie, that changes things, because there's a scene that strips that from you.
I personally haven't seen that movie, so I have to ask. In the scene where you're talking about her killing someone in broad daylight around other people, do the other people in the scene understand that she is a spirit, or do they think that she's like just another human being?
They don't see her. This girl goes through this situation and this happens to her, and they don't know anything's happening. They're moving around in and out of the space like nothing's going on.
Okay.
So you can't find safety in numbers.
Right.
You can't find, you can't escape at, like, again, broad daylight has always been the place that we can feel safe in a horror movie. The beast doesn't show itself until cover of night, right. But not in this one.
Okay.
Not in this one. So yeah, no other movie has actually, well, I think I mentioned no other movie's terrified me more. And attempts have been interesting, but Shudder, as I mentioned, is another really great, again, she's not the mother in this one, she's just a young lady, but in Shudder, there's some really interesting things that occur there as well. And some things that, again, you're not safe when you think you are, the original Ring, called Ringu, is wonderful.
Yeah, it's got a bit of Henri on it too.
It does. That's exactly right. It's the same. They're using the same idea of the Japanese Onryo ghost. And I think that I didn't know that I should be afraid of that. You know what I mean? Once I found her, I now know. I now know that I don't like that. And I love that I don't like that. And I'm terrified to find more.
It's effective, right?
Absolutely. Nothing else has been quite as effective as this to me.
All right. So slight tangent, because it's on my mind, especially today. On the subject of Onryo, do you watch the show From?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are you caught up?
I need to watch the episode that came out this week. But up to now, yeah.
That kimono lady is totally an Onryo.
I'm loving her, but she shows her face too plainly. So I'm kind of like,
yeah, true. Yeah, she's not really.
You want to hide it a little bit more from me, but I'm loving that show. Did you ever watch Lost?
I did not watch Lost. I've heard a lot of people like making assumptions and like hopefully not this predictions about the show. Like, please don't let it be purgatory. Please don't.
Yeah, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned that that's what's going to happen, and I don't want to say I hate to give it a voice. You know what I mean? But the same actors being used, and so it makes me wonder if there's going to be
the same actors. Okay.
Not the same actors, just one. And I want to get his name for you really quickly. Gosh, of course, now he should be on the main page. Harold Perrineau.
Oh yeah, the guy who plays Boyd.
Yes.
Perrineau, I think is how you pronounce it.
Perrineau,
It's like French or something.
It is, yeah. He was in Lost, and he is in From. Obviously, he's the police officer in From, or the sheriff in From. And I am, because the stories are running a similar course, I'm so curious to see if there's going to ever be some kind of connection. I would love them
same
do
universe.
So I would love to see that, because I think it's right there. They just have to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
it also borders on like psychological horror, like we were talking about earlier. That's definitely
absolutely 100%. Oh yeah. I watched Lost I was one of those faithful, watched every week, every episode from beginning to end. My prediction of the show, actually, I predicted that after the second episode, and I was right.
Yeah, everyone predicted it supposedly, and they answered. They're like, "No, it's not purgatory. No." End of the show. Yeah, it was purgatory.
yeah. But I also don't. I wonder sometimes if it really was the whole time. You can tell when the writing shifted, and I think that I'm not sure that it always was, but we'll see.
One thing I'm interested or curious about the Onryo thing is, I find it interesting that you're afraid of her. However, like if you're talking about, if this could ever be real, you'd probably never be the target of one.
Yeah. I wouldn't be the target of one. That's true, unless she thought I did something.
Yeah. But the odds of you doing something is.
Oh, right. We know the odds of me doing something are few and far between. However, when an Onryo is angry, as you'll notice, when you see, I urge you to watch this movie, this one for sure, Ju-on 2 for sure. But when the Onryo is angry, everybody suffers.
Yeah.
Right. If you're in her way, then
that's right.
Well, Mama ain't happy.
That's right. That's right. Talk about I get her. I fully get her. She makes some decisions sometimes that are, didn't need to happen, but she has every reason to be angry. So yeah, I would love it if she saw that I really had nothing to do with it, it weren't real. But I don't know if she catches me on, and I rather if I say, if I catch her on the wrong day, it doesn't matter what I had to do with it. Yeah. I think if I saw her in real life, my heart would stop. Whereas I think if I saw a real life like vampire, I'd be like, oh shoot, and then I'd be like, we need to run. But I would definitely stare at it like, look at that, that's a real vampire.
Right? That's kind of cool. I should probably run.
Yeah, with her, my heart would absolutely stop right away. Right away.
Let's see. Has there been anything in real life that has terrified you as an adult?
Yeah, and I won't go into deep details about that one, but I will say that, once you become a parent, fear takes on a whole different meaning.
Yes.
Yep.
But they're all realistic things. The supernatural has not been come into, aside from watching that movie, of course, but supernatural has not come into play in terms of real fears, like keep me up at night kind of thing. But real life changes when you become a parent.
Yeah. Flipping that question around, has there been a time in your adult life when you have felt completely calm or safe or at peace?
Same thing.
Okay.
Parenthood is everything. And for me at least, I can't speak for anyone else, but it changes your emotions and responses to every single thing. And even as my children are considerably older now, every time I look into their eyes, I feel completely safe and validated and cemented in this world.
Okay.
Even when they're doing stuff to make me go, oh my God, go to your room.
Right. Again, we're going to do these same two questions that we asked earlier, starting with the negative so we can end on the positive. Do you remember the last person you hurt?
Last person I hurt? That's a hard one, because now as a parent, like I'm actively trying my best not to hurt anybody's feelings,
right,
or hurting feelings because they have to learn lessons. You know what I mean? So right. I almost want to say, okay, this is going to be a funny question. Last person I hurt was myself.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think we've gotten that one before.
Oh, well, there you go. I had to make a decision that I didn't necessarily agree with, but it was really the best move.
Okay.
But I was terrified by the decision, terrified by the option that I had granted permission for, even while I understood the necessity of it. And I didn't compromise any morals, no, but I was frightened of potential outcomes. So everything worked out fine, by the way. But
why do you feel that you were hurt by it, though?
It was something I had already said no to, and I had to change my mind by it. And the hurt piece of it comes in that I don't want to say hurt. I'm damaged in some way because the rest of my day was not necessarily ruined, but it was tainted, and I was terrified for the rest of that day. But I had obligations I had to stand up to and do, so I couldn't live with that. I had to just let it be on the periphery, while at the same time knowing it was encompassing everything I was doing and saying that day. So I had to be present for another event, 2 other events indeed, and had to still have the terror and fear and worry happening for this one decision I had to make that was the right decision, I know, but the wrong one for me. So it worked out well and it was fine, but the day was skewed and tainted.
Okay. Do you remember the last person you helped?
Same person, same day.
I had a feeling that this was going to be the same answer for both.
Oh yeah, same person, same day, and they did the right thing and did well, and I'm very proud of them. But again, kids will get you. Kids will get you every time. And there's, like I said, when you become a parent, this is not, I can't speak for all parents, right? But I can speak for myself. When I became a parent, things were different. Things became different. Nothing's about me anymore at all. Even though I do all these things, I have, I work towards a successful career as a writer. I'm a teacher. I'm a speaker. I'm, whatever the heck I am, VP of the HWA, or whatever the heck I do. I do those things, but I live for these beings that I've created and, to watch them grow and help them along their journey. So that said, the thing that hurt me, and hurt is relative. That doesn't mean I'm saddened by it or pained by it physically. It was not a decision I wanted to make. It was not a decision I'm just glad, I put it like this. I'm glad that piece, that moment is over. I'm glad. But the person who benefited from it that was the right decision for that moment. And that person benefited. And boy, if they didn't stand up to the thing that I would have wished for them to be able to embody. And I'm so very proud. So, yeah.
What movie would you say you've watched more times than any other?
Angel Heart.
Wow. Had that one right off the top of your head.
I sure did. My favorite movie of all time. My favorite movie of all time. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Oh my gosh, do I love it.
What do you love about it?
Everything. Oh my gosh. It's psychological horror. I mean, they call it a psychological thriller. That's great. It's a psychological horror to me. And I think that every time I watch it, I find something new, which is something I really appreciate.
It has been forever since I've seen Angel Heart. I think I saw it as a teen, but was it kind of in the same vein as Serpent in the Rainbow? Like, was there a little bit of Haitian voodoo in there? Remember correctly?
But it came out around the same time, so we might be thinking of it in that same bucket. But no, it has wait a minute. Now that I think about it, but I don't know that we went as far to call it Haitian voodoo, just voodoo. We were in.
Yeah, that's right. It took place in Louisiana, didn't it?
Yeah, it could be whatever form of voodoo that might be, some Creole type of modification. I'm not really sure. Yeah. But the story is about a guy who, he's trying to find, he swears he knows who he is. He's lived his life. He thinks he lived his life like this. And, he finds that, they contract him to solve this case and find this one guy who owes this Louis Cypher something. That's so corny, but whatever. Louis Cypher something. And, he goes in on his mission, does his job as a PI. And as he does that, he uncovers all these things that just make no sense and connect in such weird ways. And you've got all of these references to, of course, voodoo and but voodoo is it, but I don't know that I was just calling it voodoo at the time. There was just some tone of religions that I knew nothing about way back when, like with Lisa Bonet and doing this stuff out with her folks and whatever. Of course, her name just escaped me. The woman who, I don't want to give too much away, but spoiler alert, this one woman gets her heart cut out of her, and she was doing some dark, like black arts kind of thing. And I don't know that we ever called it voodoo. Now I'll have to watch it again, which won't be a hardship.
I'll have to watch it again. No, you'll have to watch it 167th time.
Yes. Right? Oh, I can't bear it. I'm not sure if we use the word voodoo in there at all, but I bet you we do, but I just ignored it. And it was such different
or they just
religions and practices that I had not, maybe, I don't know. But they were so different that I was so uniquely interested in these depictions,
What?
But there's so much stuff that happens. This is the movie that changed Lisa Bonet's career.
Yeah,
She was also, the Cosby Kid. She was the daughter that, we all looked up to. We all loved her. And then she was shunned. And I kept thinking, why would you do that? Like, why? What? Because she's an adult who made a decision to be in a movie. Then I saw the movie and I was like, ooh.
Yeah. You see, you're like, oh, I see now. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, well, I get how that doesn't work with with what you all are putting out. I get it. But at the same time, I mean, Mickey Rourke has never looked better, never done better, never acted better. He was wonderful.
Yeah.
He was wonderful. You believe that so much. He is that role. He is Johnny Favorite. He is everybody. We love and believe him 100%. So yeah, Angel Heart has always given me something to think about every time I've watched it.
Okay. So if that's the one that you've watched more times than any other, and I probably know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. Is that also your favorite movie?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sounds like it is. I had a feeling.
Sounds like, yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I'll tell you, I mean, it's my favorite movie by far. But then if I were thinking about something that would come close, it might be, I love religious horror. So I think I'd say The Omen, the first one.
Okay. Yeah.
I dig that movie. I really do. But yes, Angel Heart really takes the cake for everything. But The Omen is one of those movies that I never get. I mean, if it's on, I'll sit and watch. Like I can catch it at whatever point and I'll sit down and watch.
Right? It's like that. If it's on TV, even if you've seen it 100 times, you have it on Blu-ray. It's like, gotta watch it. Gotta sit down and watch it.
I'm compelled. Like I just have to. I'm compelled. I'm using.
I was just gonna say wrong franchise.
right. Who among us who loves horror fiction or especially like religious fiction has not said the power of Christ compels you to somebody at some point at some time?
I don't believe. No one has.
I don't believe. Yeah, there's no way in the world anybody could answer that and be truthful and say they have not.
So I think you've already also answered this question, but we like to ask, do you see a common thread about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical? I think for you, the answer was either supernatural or religious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, I do not like cannibalistic movies at all. I can tell you that. Like what I don't like, those. I don't
Chris
like
is
that.
Wounded.
Are you? I can't
my
do
favorite.
it. Is it really? I saw this one movie, and supposedly this movie was banned. And what is the name of that movie again?
Raw?
No. Something about it. They thought that they were there was real animal abuse in the movie.
Oh, well, yeah, that's probably the original Cannibal Holocaust, and there was actual animal abuse in it. Yeah.
Oh, it really did happen? Oh, it really did.
Yeah, the director has said like numerous times afterwards that he's very ashamed of what they did, but it was 70s, splatter horror movies, and that was what they did at the time.
It's interesting. So I'm gonna work my way up from the bottom, shall we say? A lot of themes that came up, particularly earlier in the call, but some towards the end too. You're talking about urban fantasies, real life horrors interacting with real life. And vampires, how can I say this? The real life stuff really blends in with the, revenge and women not being treated fairly or even humanely in some cases. And the vampire stuff, it's all power dynamics. Vampires are often the two main themes with vampires are sexuality and power,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's also some muddling with the Yanryu. Like I kind of joked when I said, when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. But then I realized that actually does kind of tie in with the other theme that has really been coming up a lot in this call, which is, I don't want to say motherhood, but definitely some sort of relationship there. Like 4 of the questions at the end that we asked about in the adult section related to your relationship with your family in one way or another, and being a parent now, but also a number of the times when you talked about being safe or, the first person you hurt, you thought might have been your mom. And even, playing cards with Miss Buffalo, there was some connection there with your grandmother and, wanting to have this relationship that you said, hopefully when you get older, you have something similar. And so maybe there's this connection with mom is both power and peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering if there's some root there for lack of a better way to word it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And, it's interesting to hear it brought together in that way. So I want to say thank you for that, because it's not really something I think about. But clearly, my thoughts about motherhood and my relationship with my mother and, the mother that I hope I am for my kids definitely ties together in this way. So I really appreciate that assessment. Yeah. I mean, I think that the relationship with your mother is complicated for women, at least. And while we don't, as children, always appreciate some of the power dynamics that can occur, we still, at least, either it's subconscious or conscious. I'm not really sure. For me, I think it's been both over my life. We always want their approval. We want to make sure that we make our moms happy. Happy is relative. It's not the term.
Right.
Doesn't mean, smiles on the face or that. It's proud. It's pleased. It's maybe even garner your own level of respect outside of being a child and or a human. Respect as an adult for the person you've become. Pride, I think I said pride already. Yeah, there's that. So I think that we want to make sure that we encompass those things for our mothers. That's not to discount anything we might feel towards our fathers, but I think that from my experience, it's more profound with my mom,
right?
And that's rooted in what they give to us. My mother is someone I still look up to now. I'm beyond grown at this point, So I still look at her and find this woman that I'm in awe of in terms of what she experienced, what she had to encounter, and how she handled herself in all of those scenarios, professionally, personally. So I see that. I can see the struggles that I might have had at some point with all of those personas, and I get it because I look at myself and say, look how strong you are because of those things. Mm-hmm. Those things that you were able to see witnessed and exampled for you, and things that you witnessed that she may not know that I was looking at or noticing or remembering even. So, and as a parent, I look at, because I think about what I do. I write horror fiction. That's what I do, right? That is not the usual. Mind you, I'm a teacher as well, and all those things. I used to be a project manager. Although I had those day jobs that I could use instead of if I had to speak in front of the class for career day, which I have. The kids are far more interested in the psychological horror piece of it. They don't care so much about the teaching, but the PTA was very interested in the psychological horror piece and wondering a little bit. And I had to be careful about that. So when I think about the parent that I have been for mine, and so Halloween wasn't this gory I'm sorry for the beep. Oh my God. Can I explain to you what just popped up? Please. Oh my God. Yeah. It's, we're talking about my mom, my grandmother. It's a picture of me at age 14 with my mother and my grandmother. Apparently I posted this on November 10th sometime. And that is, reminder was a memory that just popped in from OneDrive. That beep.
That's it. The universe is all connected. It's a simulation. Crazy. We're in a simulation.
Yo, I'm serious though. Did you hear how I've just come away from some of my professional talk? I literally just said, yo, I'm telling you this just happened. Wow. Oh my God.
I just love the breaking, oh my God reaction. We're in the middle of something like, oh my God. This just happened.
I just got goosebumps. I just got goosebumps. That's insane. But that and I just saw this beautiful image. Literally, I was 14, so that it's the mom of my memory. I know what my mother looks like now, but when I think back to my mom, she looks like that.
Right.
And my grandmother, who has passed away,
archetype.
My memory is she looks like that. And it just popped up. I must be saying something right, guys. So, all right, I'll get back to it. Literally, I have goosebumps. That's crazy. I cannot believe. Oh, anyway, back to the answer. No, I think that me embodying being who I am authentically for my kids to see me do it out in the world. I don't hide it. I'm a psychological horror author. I have book signings. They've been to a few. They're not impressed. They don't care. They have grown up with me like this. So if I'm doing an interview, it's not like, whoa, mom's doing that. That's not exciting to them anymore. They're used to it.
That's her job.
And part of me is excited about that because I want them to realize that, this is my actual life. I talk about horror fiction. I write it. I go, see stuff. I'm presenting at stuff. When I'm asked to speak at stuff. And this is real life as a creative person. And guess what? You can do it too.
Yeah,
and
it's very inspiring.
I'm hoping that being able to show them that this is just who I am and this is what I'm putting out in the world empowers them to do the same in the same way that my mother's strength did the same for me. So when you talk about safety and where do you feel safe, I think it's always been, the assessment's amazing because I've never felt like I couldn't be who I am with my mom. I've never felt that my kids wouldn't accept me as their mom, as someone they could respect for being who I am. So both places provide me that comfort and that calm.
Mm. So why horror? Because couldn't you explore those things in other genres?
Maybe other people can, but not me. I've been writing horror since I was 5. Now, where'd that come from? I don't know. But it's been there forever. And it's not, I don't write it's interesting. Sometimes I'll write something gory. That's every now and then. I mean, I'm an author, so you got to try and stretch your legs. Sometimes I'll write something like zombie or vampire, like an actual traditional antagonist. But for me, my stories have always been psychological horror stories. The what if, the quiet end of the spectrum, what's on the peripheral, in your peripheral vision, as opposed to what you can stare at straight on. Now, I don't know where that came from. That to me is just a talent that I've had. Can I write another genre? Sure, I've written. Psychological horror is beautiful in that it straddles the line between mystery, suspense, thriller, that kind of stuff all the time anyway. So you get to play in those spaces. But I've pulled in some science fiction before. I've pulled in some romance, and that's fun. But traditionally, I write this horror thing, and I don't know why that is. Other people express themselves in other aspects of, fiction, speculative or not. But for me, it's always been this.
Not because you don't think you could, but just because it's either where you're comfortable or it's familiar ground, shall we say? Or you just don't feel a desire or...
Yeah, that's more so it.
Yeah.
I don't feel a desire to write in any other genre. I mean, if it hits me one day to do so, great. I love cross genre. So I get to play, in different spaces, but I love horror fiction. So
it's what I'm
interested in writing. 100%. You know what I mean? And that's an interesting thing because a lot of people, something I actually cover in the horror aesthetic, but I've talked about I talked about it in my dissertation. I talk about it all the time. A lot of people don't claim horror, especially a lot of African-American or African diaspora writers. They don't claim horror fiction as their genre. That's for a lot of reasons, but I am excited that I've always been comfortable here in this space and calling myself who I am. That's not to diminish anyone else's thought. Do what you want. I mean, obviously, I am not. I'm a supporter of all media, so I am not making a discussion or a comment here about someone else's choice. I'm talking about my choice. I claim horror fiction because it is me. It's what I do.
Well, I think we've got a pretty good summary for you. Before we hit the closing, was there anything earlier in the call maybe that you thought of that you didn't get a chance to say? Like you thought of something and the conversation took a left turn?
No, if I hadn't figured out Shivers, it would have been that.
I'm glad that we...
And I can't remember what book I read that was Dostoevsky's that I loved. I can't remember that. That's gone. That was, I graduated from Howard in 95. We could just forget it from now on. It's not happening. But no, I think I got the chance to say a whole lot of stuff, and I really appreciate that. And I think it is the neatest thing ever. Like I'm not very, like I say, I love religious horror, but I don't know. I sometimes can see some of the connections between afterlife and current life and things like that. But that picture popping up was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That was like... I kid you not. Sometimes you gotta wonder, right? But I definitely, like after this, I will be calling my mother and sending her that picture and saying, you know what happened? Guess what happened? Right? Because that's like the coolest thing. Because I haven't even looked at that picture in years and years. My grandmother passed away almost 18 years ago. Mm. And that was just the most beautiful, encouragement. So I think that when we talk about strength and we talk about comfort and safety, wow, look what just happened.
Right.
All of that translates into acceptance. And that if I had been asked that question, I would easily have given you the answer of I got acceptance for who I am as I didn't know the word psychological horror author at the time, of 5, but the acceptance from those two people, those very two people, my mother and grandmother, set the course for me to be able to lean into myself and be who I am.
I'm glad that you got that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because, had we not had this discussion, I wonder if that would have happened today. The notification clearly, obviously, I put the picture up on the 10th, but would it have meant the same and it had the same impact for me today if we weren't talking about this? So thanks for these really great questions.
Our pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm going to get together with you offline to get bio for you, some pictures that we can use for social media, links that we'll put together a bio page for you on our website and link to whatever it is you want us to link to. Again, before we head to closing, do you want to let people know what you're currently working on and where they can find it?
Oh, sure. My most recent release is The Horror Aesthetic. As I mentioned before, it's a nonfiction exploration, if you will, about the horror genre and how people fit into it. I mean, I think that's the best way to phrase it. Upcoming, I have a few things in February. That's the only one I have a date for. So in February, I've got a book 4 actually of the open book universe, the 4th installation.
Okay.
4th and final, actually. It's a really interesting project that I'm doing with Falstaff Books. It's called The Lost Stories, but the overarching title for the actual universe is called The Open Book Universe. And so in essence, what it is the first book is a novella called The Open Book. The second that came out in tandem with it is a short story collection called The Tales of Time. And the the short of it is that the people who exist in the open book are reading the cursed book called The Tales of Time. And if they complete stories in there, well, bad things happen to them.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's the same reaction that most people give. And they look at me like, ooh, but okay.
Right? Yeah, it's like interesting.
Right? Exactly. The third book is actually a collection of poetries. Poetries, that's funny. I made up a new word. Collection of poetry that is called The Imitation of Life. And it's the fever dream of someone who almost completed a story in The Tales of Time.
Okay.
So this final book, The Lost Stories, is a collection of the stories that were not completed by anyone that was in the open book universe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Books about books.
Yeah, nice little fun. Books about books. It was a lot of fun.
Well, again, thank you for your time, and thank you to anybody out there listening. We'll have Ms. Wood's bio page on our website. You can find her there and link to all the fun stuff through that. If you like what we're doing, let a friend know.